Commissioner Van Haverbeek,
Here.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Here.
Commissioner Holliday,
Here.
Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Ide,
Here.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Here.
Vice Chair Shaw.
Here. All right. We have an opportunity here for citizen comments, please. I guess not related to things on the agenda here, other than what's on the agenda. Okay. We'll go into general business, and keep in mind this is the urban renewal part of this. I think we have a city commission work session following this. So this is urban renewal, and we're going to be moving into 3A, which is the presentation of the proposed changes to the Cove Disposition and Development Agreement. And Economic Development Manager Eric Underwood, please.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. As you know, in April 1st, 2015, we signed an agreement, executed a DDA for the Cove project. Since that time, Phase 1 has commenced construction. It began in August, so I'm sure you've all seen the dirt piles out there behind the Oregon City Shopping Center. But also, during that time, we've had some changes that are being proposed for Phase 2, which is the waterfront piece there, lots 3 through 7. The applicant or the developer, Mr. Ed Darrow with Clackamas Cove LLC, introduced those changes and proposed to present them as an amendment to the current DDA. However, it was staff's opinion that the changes were significant enough where it was more than what is normally covered by an amendment. So we have asked Mr. Darrow to come present the changes to you tonight in order for you guys to make a determination whether or not you'd like to move forward with the project. So that being said, I'll go ahead and introduce Mr. Darrow and ask him to come up and make his presentation.
Evening, Ed. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. Ed Darrow, the developer on the Cove. We would like to go through this modification with you and step through where we have been, where we're going, and where we'd like to go. Modifications which you think will be well accepted. Let me like to first introduce a new partner which I have. This is David Mooney here on the right, and then Colin Keyhole. They're out of Canada. Jointly, we've done over $5 billion worth of projects. They've done several here in the States and several up in the Canada area. Going to the project, the URC on this first slide here has already made changes to Lot 1 and to Lot 5. Lot 1 was originally going to be about 57,000 square feet of office space, and on Lot 5 we had about 80,000 square feet of office. The issue really came down to, can we go ahead with Phase 2 and leave that centerpiece out on Lot 5 and just have a hole in the middle of Phase 2? The real issue is that there really isn't a market for 80,000 square feet of suburban office space in this community, and we don't expect that to happen into the far future. So, I don't know, it was a couple of months ago we brought this before you and asked to make a change and drop that out, and that was amendment number 1. That was signed off by the URC, and then the fact that we had the blue algae and the issues with the sustainability of having, a good water quality in the cove was a very scary thing for us as developers. We felt like we had to figure out how to make that sustainable and how to work that out. So we came to you and asked if you would support hiring a separate entity to do a full-blown feasibility analysis. That's John Runyon. He's with us here tonight, and I believe he just completed the plan today. So he will be presenting that to you and to Eric. And then if, in fact, there's any questions on that, we can actually have him come up and go through that also. Point this way, or?
No, you should just be able to.
Is it the bottom button, or? Aha. The plat map here basically shows you all of the different lots. We've got Phase 1, which is on Lot 2, about 11 acres. Phase 2 is the 5 different lots which go across the waterfront and set in front of the esplanade. And then between that esplanade and the water is Tract C. That's about 3 acres. And then we jump up to Phase 3, which would be the mitigation program, and that's on Tract A, Lot 1, the little inlet area, and then the spit. And that's part of that program, which we'll discuss here as we move through. The current master plan, the last master plan that you saw was the 2015 master plan. We are now breaking this into basically 4 different phases. Phase 1 is off and running with the 244 garden apartments. Phase 2 would be going across the waterfront. That's 8.8 acres there. And what we're proposing as a change here is to increase the density and increase the number of units from what, in fact, the last one that you saw, I believe, was almost 300 units, 287. The last CDP that was approved, however, was for 195. So we'd be actually going back to the CDP from that point forward. But this is not a major switch from where we had been before. And the rationale is to increase this density, be able to create a higher tax base, be able to, in fact, handle part of the floodplain issues. And I've got drawings here that I'll walk you through to show you that. The transportation program, as you know, Lot 2 has the orange area, which they're doing right now. It involves Main Street and the turnaround. And then it stops at their property line. And then on Phase 2, we would pick up all of the frontage of Agnes and the Agnes extension. And if you recall, the Agnes extension is really not a full-blown street. ODOT did not want that to be connected all the way through, so there would be at that terminus, at the turnaround at Lot 7, it would be bollards there. It would be used for emergency ingress, egress in the event of an issue or in the mid of any kind of a flooding program.
Hang on a second, Ed. So the stuff that's on the Cove side of Agnes, does Urban Renewal or your company control all of that property?
No. The lots that are defined there is 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. That's 8.8. That would be a purchase that we would be making from the URC. And then in front of that is Tract C. Tract C is about 3 acres. That's, if you know where the trail is now, it's like running right along here.
Yeah.
So all of that property, which has, you know,
I'm talking about the stuff that's shown in shadow. So down here, like that building and that property.
Oh no, that's separate property. That's not. That's.
So how are we closing Agnes?
What do you mean closing it?
Well, if you're going to bollard Agnes at the roundabout.
No, the roundabout next to Lot 7. So it's right here.
Down here.
Oh, okay. All right. Never mind.
So, and I have had conversations with these people. Originally, there was a concept to have that purchased. I tried to buy it, was not successful. They have an unusual expectation. Then there was the thought that maybe the city would take and condemn it. It's not an outright use in that zone. So there's a question of when that, in fact, would be able to be terminated. I did contact them, try to contact them last week just to get an update, but I wasn't successful. But we would like to see that get cleaned up. Then on Phase 2, Agnes would get built in total, and then this extension, which comes over here, and would be Ballard right in that location. In Phase 3, that's going to be subject to the report, which is being published today, and probably you guys will have it tomorrow. It was when that would actually start, and it's a whole program in and of itself. So it's actually sitting out there to be determined when that actually could start. John Runyon can come up here in a minute or two and give you a little background on that if we have the time to do that. We do have another full presentation that goes through the mitigation program, but I wasn't planning on doing that unless it was a request. This is basically just showing the circulation pattern that would go across Agnes and go out the extension paths that are shown across the Esplanade. And then at the north end, at the North Park, there are several paths showing going out on the peninsula, and John can probably talk to that also. There's been several entities that have said that they would want us to discourage that being a path. Under the current DDA, it does say that we'll put in a path there, not something monstrous, but just an access point. And they are recommending, because it is one of the highest value for habitat, that we do not open it up and that it be closed off. So that's something that could be modified in the DDA, or it could be left as it is. That's the balance of the circulation, which is Main Street going up to the Firestone Alley and then coming back around. This is the current conceptual plan, and I want to emphasize that it is conceptual. We've got a total of 8 buildings that are running off the plaza area. Those buildings will be anywhere from 60 to 50 units each. There'll be a combination of vertical heights that'll go from 3 stories, 4 stories, and potentially even 5. The center area which is right here at the plaza, we want to make that a very public area so that it can have different venues in front of Building 9 and Building 10 facing the water. Those will be restaurants, and they will have an open plaza area facing out to the water. And then where it actually says plaza, that steps down so that it could actually have, limited little venue programs there. So you could have restaurant seating out here and here. You could have seating in here. And then this area with the 2-3 step downs could potentially be a presentation area for small programs that either the city or somebody would like to put on. We also have in that location, we have a leasing office and a fitness center, which would be for the residents. And then we have another small area that is not in the current DDA. It's about 2,300 square feet that we kind of envision that could be a rental place for bicycles or for kayaks and canoes and whatever that could be brought down to this area. The intent would be to have an area here that would just be racks where people could keep their kayaks and canoes. So that's out there, and we're showing a little sand beach. We import sand, make it so that you could actually go down there and have a nice day in the sun and hit the water. The swim docks, the intent there is to utilize existing pilings, cut those down, but then put a swim dock there, and that would be for the public and for the residents. And then over in the far right, by the amphitheater, is the Water Sports Center. Originally, we had talked to the Sheriff's Department about taking over their building. Then I got a call, this is several months ago, from the Sea Scouts, and they said that they would like to take it over. And I said, well, we have done these in the past, but they have usually been turned over to the city, and the city orchestrates the programs and writes the check. And I said, if you guys are willing to, in fact, take it over and make it open to the public for teaching sailing, teaching water safety, then we'll just defer to you. That has not been formalized. Last time I talked to them, I said we need to go to the city. We need to get it into a formal agreement. So that would be nice, though, to have them take that over. And there's been a lot of discussion over the years about motorized boats or not. I think the latest iteration has been let's eliminate motorized boats. Not if somebody wants to come in and fish in there, that's one thing, but to have a marina where it's motorized, I've come to the opinion that they're probably right. I'd like to keep the water as clean as possible, and having been a boater all my life, there's no way to keep it really good if you got boats running in and out of there typically. Plus, if you're going to have kids and swimming, it's just a dangerous combination. Let's see what else is on here. I think we're showing the plaza, which I think will be a super public area. And also we'll have access points so that people coming down can cut through to the Esplanade. This is the mitigation program here, showing the different spots. And I might ask John to come up for a minute if that's acceptable, if you want to go outside the basic program here. But this is part of the current program, so I'd like to take a sidestep here and have John talk about that.
How long will that take? You work on the behind
Maybe
schedule.
5 to 10 minutes, just
Okay,
a
let's
quickie.
go ahead.
For the record, John Runyon, let's see, am I on? John Runyon, Cascade Environmental Group. In essence, I was asked to look at the feasibility of improving habitats throughout the Cove area in the aquatic sections, as well as riparian and more upland areas. And as part of that charge, I was asked to look at potential mitigation for the site and the feasibility of that. And the bottom line is, it's a feasible site for mitigation. There's a market for the kinds of habitats that you would create there, that is shallow water and floodplain habitats, primarily for fish. And that's one of the reasons that I think actually having motorboats not in the cove would be an appropriate move, because if you're trying to enhance habitat for fish, motorized craft don't necessarily contribute to the best environment for that. So as Ed pointed out, Lot 1, the inlet area, and then that spit, which is on the northwest side of the cove, would be the primary focus for habitat mitigation. It would be developed with 3 mitigation markets in mind, and the ultimate mitigation market and credits would have to be determined with state and federal agencies. But the 3 markets are standard sort of wetland mitigation. There's one bank in the service area, and it's starting to run out of credits, and that's up in the Clackamas. There's a bank there. It could potentially supplement those credits, and as that bank closes out, could be a source of wetland credits throughout the Clackamas Basin and potentially within Oregon City. The other credit market is Portland Harbor Superfund, and that market is really focused on creating shallow water fish habitat, which has been lost in the lower Willamette. The Cove is really well situated to create those kinds of habitats, but it would require fill material to create shallow water areas, certainly feasible to do that. And that market is maturing right now, but it's much more valuable based on kind of initial credit sales than even wetland mitigation. And then the third market, which is hasn't been developed in Oregon but is in Washington, and there's a need in Oregon, and that's a conservation mitigation bank for ESA-listed species. Here it would primarily be for ESA-listed salmon and fish species. There is the potential to, in fact, tap into all 3 of those markets and combine mitigation, but that have to be done in consultation with the agencies. So the bottom line is it's feasible. The next step with this is to move forward with what's called a pre-prospectus meeting with the state and federal agencies, principally the Division of State Lands, Army Corps of Engineers, and NOAA Fisheries, and ODFW, and essentially sit down with them and scope out the project, move forward. Implementation of it depends on how you want to fund the project, because it's a speculative sort of deal. You have to fund all of the entitlement, permitting, and construction up front, and then sell credits over time that would more than cover those expenses and would provide profit. But determining who to do that is really kind of one of the next steps. But with that in place, you could move forward fairly quickly with the process.
And a small annotation to that, the creating the funds is not a function of the city or of me as the developer. It really comes out to third parties that put up the funds to do that, and then they sell the credits and get their funds back and get a return on their capital. So it's not a project which, in fact, will put a burden economically onto the city or onto us.
And I've spoken with mitigation bank developers who would potentially have the capital to develop the project. They're interested. They would like to see that pre-prospectus meeting move forward, and if the agencies are on board with it, that really sets the stage to try to secure additional capital.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John.
Question about that. As you do this mitigation area, is it compatible to also have walking trails and interpretation for the public?
It is compatible. There are mitigation banks that have that. And in fact, you would want to have trails and observation areas for the public, because right now out there, there really isn't a defined trail system, and therefore there could be habitat impacts. With a defined trail system, with observation areas, you can focus human uses in particular areas and minimize the impact on the mitigation site and other sensitive habitats. So it's a good thing. And I can see it really becoming a destination for bird watching and a whole variety of activities.
That's one of the reasons why on tract A up here, we've talked about in the redesign of this program to increase the parking area from 14 up to at least 29, because the interpretive program would allow people to park right up into that area and then walk back into the trail system. Currently, we've got some people living out there, which is not unusual, but it would be policed and would be signed, and there would be interpretive signs, et cetera, that would go along the trail system.
One other question. I know you've been focusing on the north and west portion, but the spit, is that imagined for some kind of mitigation as well, or is that a separate discussion?
So you're talking about that spit on the west side there. That would be potentially part of the mitigation bank because it has valuable floodplain habitat. It wouldn't necessarily be wetland habitat.
I guess I was talking about across the...
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, as Ed pointed out, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and others have recommended that that area have limited access. That is, decommission the trails there, set it aside as essentially wildlife habitat, because it is the highest quality habitat in the area. So that's the recommendation. We're not proposing to include that directly in the mitigation bank. However, it potentially could be over time if it was set aside and protected. That could be an area that could be pulled into mitigation.
So I think we're going to probably go further in depth on that at a later time.
Sure.
So if we could kind of keep going with Ed's program here, please.
This was just a listing of the mitigation program. As you said, we can bring that up at a later time. The status of the DDA at this point, it's in full force and effect, was signed on the 20th, 2015, April. And we have one amendment, which was to take Lot 5 and turn that into a usable product now. And then also the second one was the mitigation area, which is Lot 1. So those have already been amended and are part of the existing DDA. This is a pretty long list here, but it's what has been approved and what needs to be approved. So we've got the 244 we had under the CDP 1501. We had 195 residents on the waterfront. We had 11,000 square feet of office in that. We had 3,000 square feet of restaurant, 2 of them. Leasing and fitness, and then the North Park and the amphitheater, Agnes and the extension, the Esplanade and Track C, which is out in front of the Esplanade towards the water, and then as potential, the marina and the water sports center, and then as a new item, the potential addition of 2,300 square feet of commercial. And these are the ones that need to be approved, which is to be the feasibility area, and then part of Main Street as part of the feasibility program under the mitigation. And Tract A, the increasing of the parking in that area, then the commercial. And then our preference would be to follow the recommendation to delete hiking path out on that peninsula.
So do you own that piece of property, the peninsula?
No. You do.
The city does?
Yes.
So where's the dividing line?
Let's see. Get this to go backwards. I can use this. The city currently owns all of this, which is the 8 acres. In front of that, down towards the water, is the Tract C, which is owned by the city. And we have the requirement, pardon me, of maintaining that. And when we went forward with that, the mayor at the time, Doug Neely, said, "No, we don't want you to have that waterfront. We want to have the waterfront." I said, "I don't care who owns it, but I want to maintain it because it is the window to the whole project." So
Sure.
that area down there, we're willing to maintain it. And the nice thing about the current plan, not the current plan, but the new plan. The current plan was to take and cut that all back and roll that dirt up to create a pad for the units here. We're now talking about doing a podium across here to put the units on, and then we'll go in and clean up that whole tract, take the trees out that are bad. There's quite a few in there, and then replant it and actually make it a full revegetated area.
So, to answer my question, where is the dividing line between the spit and your property? Is it right there?
Right here is the end of the lot 7. Then you got the North Park, which you own, and then all the rest of it's yours going around.
Okay.
This was a package that was put together by Eric to show that we had accomplished the fundamental requirements under the existing DDA. And as you go down through this, the list of land use approvals, that was completed. Going to the second one there, it's going to hit the red lines to the right. Phase 2 infrastructure work, that was completed. The earthwork plan was submitted and completed. Boley was submitted. We spent over $60,000 walking that through Boley, and the outcome of that was that after several months of negotiation with them, we were able to get the first phase out of prevailing wage. But to do that, I had to agree that any existing current new phases would have to pay prevailing wage. And that's about a 10 to 12% additional cost on top of your project. The other thing that happened is that the guys that are Grand Cove wanted to come in as the partners for the whole project. When they saw that we were going to get stuck with the prevailing wage, they said they didn't want to do that. They wanted to just do phase 1. So I went ahead and let them take that over. The completion bond, that has been submitted and still needs to be reviewed. And the form of construction easement, that's completed and still needs to be reviewed. Form of the dredging agreement, which is questionable whether that is something that even needs to be moved forward. Private area maintenance plan, that's been submitted. Memorandum of private area maintenance plan, that was submitted. Private area maintenance lien, that was submitted. Public area cost agreement, that is completed. See, upon submission. This was just some submittal dates. Then the next one down, 19, design standards, those were submitted. The submitted of the land use approvals, that needs to be done. It shows completed, but it needs to be completed. And then submission of the applications for land use needs to be accomplished. And this is kind of an overview, just going to the red lines again. The Clackamas Cove is submitted and had all the URC fundamental preconditions completed. The development plan that we are currently looking at has the mitigation program, and that's been favorably completed. And we are requesting the alternate plan, which would be to basically just increase the number of units. And the reason for these revisions is we would like to create a higher value in terms of the project. We believe it'll be good for the city in terms of having a higher tax increment. Ultimately, when we convert this to condominiums, having parking below the units in a private, secure area will be very positive. And when we have done conversions in the past, that usually kicks the value up by 30%. We're looking at a value generally in the neighborhood of $120 million for this project. So that project, together with what we have under construction right now, we're bringing about $200 million to the city. The other thing with doing the parking garage is that we will not have to import substantial dirt because we're going to have that 12, 14 feet of height will actually be parking area. That is a very positive thing, because as a developer, usually the scariest part of anything that you do is moving the dirt and going down into the dirt, and as you can see over on lot 1, there's a lot of concrete and what have you that has surfaced. So it's positive in terms of just a building approach. The other thing that it does, it helps us balance the floodplain, and that's super positive because we don't have to bring in dirt. Right now we have the right through Phase 1's agreement, which I put together for them with Tri-City. They've got 80,000 cubic yards of dirt there. We don't want to use it. We don't want to import it. We would prefer to balance it out by creating this parking structure. So that's very positive. The other issue is Track C, which is out in front of the esplanade towards the water. We will not be disturbing that anywhere near as much as if we would have if we had to cut that all back and use that dirt. The other thing that we're doing is creating a much higher use, mixed use, which is bringing a lot more public to the central area. And again, we're going to have to invest another $2.5 million to accomplish this. So it's a very substantial commitment. We have been abeyance for the last few months because we want to make sure that the mitigation was going to work, and then we'll actually turn it on to go back and spend several more $1 million. We considered a super public area. Every project that we have done, and there's been 8 waterfront projects, we have not excluded the public. We like to bring the public to the project. We like to put in pathways. It's for everybody. On site where the buildings actually are, that would be private area. We'd like to put restrictions on the time use for the esplanade, so it's not a noisy thing with kids and what have you, but it'll be very public and very open.
Can you go back, Ed? So over on my left, in Phase 1, it says connectivity access to the Oregon City Shopping Center. Is that vehicular or just pedestrian?
There's ballards there, and it's primarily for pedestrian and bicycles. Okay. Now, if there's any questions, please.
I have a question on the higher density of the apartments / condos. Will the transportation network accommodate that many more units? I'm assuming it would.
Yes, the thing that we're adding more residential, but we took out 80,000 square feet of office, and we took out 57,000 square feet of office. We have a proposal from the traffic guys, Killison, to update that. There's going to be no question that it's valid.
Commissioner Smith. You've been writing a lot over here.
I feel sick, and I have a lot of questions, and I'm sorry, but I think there's some things that, well, partly I will say this, as we all know, has been a project that has gone on for going on a decade. I've been there 8 years of it. No one else on this commission has. It has changed drastically, and I have huge concerns about that. First of all, nearly or even over doubling the amount of units. Remember when we first started this project, the 244 garden apartments was mixed use or office space. The lot 1, I believe, was possibly a hotel or recreation center. The condo buildings were condo buildings, and now are apartments being converted to condos, maybe. But we don't know that. And that was 195 of them. And now there's going to be upwards of 425 of them. For close to 700 apartments, which is not what this project was. And I think when people in the public, like our last project with the Rivers, saw on paper what it was supposed to look like at the beginning, and then were so disappointed when it all fell apart, this is kind of why this happens. Because by the time we get there, it's not the same project. And I think tonight we saw how that presentation that we just saw. How many pages was that? We just now saw it. We didn't see that presentation. We got 2 pictures. We got a couple little, parts of that. But all of what we just saw for the first time. And that bothers me because some of those pictures show things that really aren't here. The last picture showed a different building arrangement than what was in the presentation modified. So I think that last picture that you gave us, which is really smart, was the original building layout. Not the one that you're, moving forward with tonight. So much time tonight was talked about beaches and marinas and swim docks and sports centers. Very little was talked about how many more buildings, the size of the buildings, up to 5 stories. And I remember going to meetings and meetings and meetings about each way that the building was going to be and the visual viewing areas and all of that to go to something that's completely different. And in multiple documents up there, it shows the marina and the sports center as different phases. Look through some of the documents. Some of it listed as phase 2, some of it listed as phase 4. Okay, that was very sneaky. Some of them say potential marina. You know that we may not build that. He may not build that. There's nothing that says that those things are going to be built. So, I think it would be extremely an extremely poor decision for this commission currently to say we're okay moving forward without more time to look at this, without a commissioner that has already been elected not being able to deliberate on this. I will be very disappointed in this commission if we move on with this tonight.
Yeah, I comment on those issues.
Hang on, let's go through the commission here.
Yeah. Nobody else is up here.
I am.
Yeah, I am.
I've got.
You got to go up to
Where are we at here?
on the floor.
Here we go.
Oh, go back to agenda.
Okay. I got Mayor Holliday here.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I have some concerns as well, and I don't disagree with anything Commissioner Smith said. So I have a couple questions for staff. One, has this changed so substantially that it triggers a reset through the Planning Commission?
Yes.
Okay. So that negates, any possibility of us approving this tonight. So to reassure Commissioner Smith. One of my questions, and I see that you put, are you building these as above ground parking structures, or are you actually digging down?
Well, the elevation right now is anywhere from about 40 to 50. So we have to be at elevation 53 for the first finished floor. So we'll actually take and what I call spin out the existing grade, build the concrete structure, then backfill on the Agnes side to create the street up at the elevation. So
And then
we're not-
backfill on the other side so that it's,
No, we won't backfill on the other side. We'll actually create a slope up and then plant that.
Oh, okay.
So that it'll hide that parking structure.
and that, so you're building one level of parking?
Yes.
And that will satisfy the city's parking requirements for all of those extra units?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's something obviously that would be part of going through the Planning Commission, right? So, I think that all of Commissioner Smith's concerns are valid concerns. I think this is going to have to, now that we know this, it's going to have to go back through the Planning Commission. I would say let it go through the Planning Commission, see what happens there, and then, come back to the Urban Renewal Commission after the Planning Commission's done with it.
Mr. Mitchell?
I'll start by saying I'm new to the party on this as a newer commissioner, but I probably know just about enough about how it got to here to be dangerous. But I know this has always been promoted as a mixed-use development, and I got to agree with what Commissioner Smith said. This is a giant apartment complex. The retail sales went away, the general office went away, the medical office went away. And a majority of what I see is an apartment complex. And two restaurants. Okay. All right. I had the opportunity over the last few months before the election to speak to several different neighborhood associations about a ballot measure that we're all familiar with. And on more than one occasion, when I brought up this development as a positive multi-use development that came about because of urban renewal, traffic was thrown in my face instantly. Admittedly, it's a small group of people that go to neighborhood association meetings. I think they probably have a particular axe, in some cases anyway, that they're grinding, but they're also, that is our land use component for public involvement. And there were major concerns brought up, and now, like Rocky said, we've doubled the amount of units. And I realize, the office going away, whatever. I have the same kind of concerns that Commissioner Smith has and Commissioner Holliday has. This doesn't seem like what we originally wanted to have. And then I guess I've got to ask, just because I'm a little confused, is what is this commission being asked to vote on or decide tonight?
Well, the commission's being asked is whether or not they want to move forward with this project as it's being proposed. Staff was directed by the commission early on, or possibly a year ago, to not negotiate anymore. So that's one of the reasons with all these changes, we see this as a rewrite of the DDA and a renegotiation of the DDA. So this is basically a request to the commission of whether or not they want to proceed with this project. So there are impacts if you do with staff. We will have to rewrite the DDA. We'll have to include the new use for phase 4. We'll need a solid master plan. We'll need that submitted. We did some design review as part of the preconditions. We haven't seen any renderings of materials or the new units or anything like that, so that would have to go back and be reviewed by the commission. I guess we're also asking if there's a new list of fundamental conditions that we would go through, because we made a list of preconditions that the developer had to meet in order to make the project move forward. Is there a new list that's going to arise from this proposal?
Where's the old list?
He showed it to you a minute ago. It's in the presentation as part of your attachments.
Okay.
There's an inventory of that.
We accomplished those items that were in that list.
So we'll have to incorporate the feasibility study, the habitat restoration effort. We haven't seen any valuation numbers or anything from the investors, so we haven't had a chance to review the financials for that piece. And then there's attorney's fees and that sort of thing. So that's a whole new negotiation.
Mr. Mitchell, are you satisfied here?
Yeah.
Okay. So if this is supposed to go to planning, Mr. Underwood, when does that happen? Is that after the DDA, or is it supposed to be before the DDA is done, or what? Evidently, it's supposed to go to planning.
Well, we would have to have a DDA. We would have to have an agreement. We'd have to draft something up.
Before it goes to the planning?
Yes, before it moves forward. Absolutely.
So I'm confused. So this whole thing has gone through the Planning Commission once, right?
Yes.
right?
Not with the
Well, that's
the new
because this is a
units.
different project.
I know,
Yeah.
so now it has to go back
Right.
through after the DDA, right?
Yeah, here's my thing is I would require some more time to think about this and digest it and discuss it because there's a lot that's obviously way different than before. I'm certainly not comfortable in making any kind of a recommendation to staff today on whether we move forward with this or not.
Okay, Commissioner Mingelberg.
Like Commissioner Smith, I'm disappointed about the lack of job creation. Creating new investment is a good benefit of this new approach, but originally there was going to be places where people work, a live work kind of a situation, and that's gone away, so that's disappointing. There were a couple questions that were brought up in the presentation about motorized, et cetera, so I'd like to weigh in with my 2 bits. I'd go with the non-motorized. It's just a much nicer environment. Stand-up paddle boarding is really popular now. It kind of creates a central point for the boating to happen in the cove, but not have to go out into the river, which could be dangerous for some of the non-motorized vessels. On the question of the path, I strongly feel that we should have a walking path that goes out around the spit. It's a beautiful view. If we're going to be cramming this many people into this spot, we want to promote active recreation and places to walk and see. If it's a designated path, it'll keep people more in that location and not harming the vegetation and the wildlife. So I think you can have a compatible approach there. Also, people having a place where people can be tends to discourage other activity that we don't want to have happen when there aren't people there. That's happening now. Let's see. If we have so many people in space, I'd really encourage some kind of convenience store or a small grocery store or something so that all of these residents don't have to get in their cars just to go and buy a bottle of milk or some eggs. If they can walk and get some of their basic needs met on site, that would really help with the traffic situation. I like some of the public amenities you're talking about. It's part of a public-private partnership to make it a really active place and inviting place. So the Esplanade and the public plaza are great amenities. I like the idea of the sand beach and the active water sport area. And if you can do a partnership with the Sea Scouts, that's great. So that's my comments.
All right, Commissioner Hyde.
I just have one question. I noticed that you said that there was no market for 80,000 square feet of office space, and I'm sure that you have some data or something where you determined that. I was just curious how you determined that there was no market for that.
We went out to see if we could actually market it. Originally, if you recall, on lot 1, which is the current 244, we had a medical entity 6 years ago. They passed because that market was changing phenomenally. They had lost several millions of dollars. That was Kaiser, I believe it was Kaiser, yeah. And so I went out to other medical entities. Nobody was in that position to, in fact, expand that program. So to keep the project moving forward, we converted that to an apartment project. And then it was brought up that the marina is not a positive. And if you read the DDA, it says it's not an option. It's strictly an option, not an obligation. It's never been a mandatory thing because is there a market? And now that we're looking at what we're talking about, modifying that area and making it more habitat friendly, that is going away, and there's a reason for that. On the site plan, our preference tonight would be to have this opportunity to say, all right, go back through the planning process, and you, as the ultimate body, review that as we go through and make the decision. I mean, that's very difficult for you to be able to take this minimal amount of effort that's being presented to, in fact, say that it's right or it's wrong. You can get emotional about it because it's different. It is different because of the economy. It's changed phenomenally. We are in the business of building what in fact will be acceptable in the marketplace. So that's why we're making these modifications. But the process, the way I would see it, is that we need to know that we have an opportunity to buy the property. You have the right to say what goes on it. If in fact we said, all right, we'll move forward with you, you have to go through the standard land use process, which is going back to the planning process, and everything that gets done there, you get the right to review and accept or reject. Right now you have, you've got $3-5 million invested. We have several millions of dollars invested. We're not here to stretch this thing so that it doesn't work or it's not acceptable. We want to do it in the natural process. This is not a stamp to say you can go ahead and do everything you want. No, it's to get the process started where we will invest several million additional dollars, way beyond what we've currently got, and you will be the ultimate arbiter of what in fact is acceptable. And that's, you know, if we go back and just do a new set of fundamental plans, if we could actually say, all right, put Ed under the gun and make him perform under the planning director and under the planning process, then it comes back to you for an approval. So this isn't my intent to say, come on guys, just sign off on this thing. We want to do the process correctly, and we want to do it to where the whole community has accepted it. And I've done probably 30 outreach programs to the community, and a lot of times, as you said, not a lot of people show up, but it's all been well received. And the intent here, this is an extreme number on the outside, the 400. We're going through that planning process. We have got to invest. Our budget is $2.5 million to do the concept plans and get those ready to go through to present to you. So we'd like to have that opportunity, but I need to know that you're going to participate ultimately by letting us buy the land. If we have nothing that says that you're not even going to give us that opportunity, why would we invest a whole bunch more money and try to get you what you want? If you don't want it, you don't have to take it.
Thanks, Dad.
Back to the question. I just would like to see some more data or more effort at trying to market that area instead of turning some of that into apartment complexes. But that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
You actually did vote on taking Lot 5 out of an office. It is the First Amendment to the DDA, because we went out, we knocked on a lot of doors, talked to some of the people that are in this community. It just wasn't there. So it's not an easy thing to create a market where there isn't one.
Commissioner Holliday.
So we have our retreat on the 20th, right? Could we renotice that and let Commissioners Mitchell and come for a piece of that so that we could have a fuller discussion about this there? Would that be?
We would notice it as two separate meetings. We wouldn't notice it as the
Well,
same.
right,
Okay.
but,
Yes,
but, I
we
mean, but I mean,
And-
we could do it on the same day.
I think there's a lot crammed into that day. I would prefer we choose a new day that would work, if that works for the commission.
Okay. I guess the other question I have for you, Ed, and don't take this the wrong way, but what if we go through this exercise, you go back through the planning commission, you know, all this takes time, so you're probably a year away, right?
I think we can get it done in less than that.
Okay. What happens if the market changes then again?
Well, that's
Are
the
we
business
going
that I'm in. You
to
have to
go back and do all this again?
You don't know, and I don't know exactly how the market's changed. I've been doing this for 50 years. I've had only one project that I did not move forward with and complete. This current concept is very marketable. It's the highest profile type investment in the country right now. It might change, but it's not going to change to where it's going to be eliminated. It's a risk, and we've already got several $1 million in it. We're willing to risk another $2.5 million just to, in fact, get the opportunity to do it and give you the opportunity to review it. So it seems like we're both taking a risk, you're taking a risk that the piece of property, which is basically a brownfield, can get converted. We're taking a risk and saying this concept will work in the marketplace, and we're very comfortable with it, the way that'll work.
Okay. I guess we have one urban renewal work session in January or two.
We can have as many meetings
Yeah.
as the urban renewal seems like if they had
Well,
however
then
many they want to
I-
discuss this for.
I would make a motion that we hold this over to the first work session for urban renewal in January, and that we allot enough time in that work session for the Urban Renewal Commission to have a full discussion about, what was there before, what's proposed now, if there are changes that we want to make, all of those kinds of things. We think we need to have a much fuller discussion on this than we have had time for tonight.
Before we move through the DDA and all.
Yes.
Okay.
And I put that in the form of a motion.
Yeah.
Second.
All right. Moved and seconded for a continuance.
Is there anyone? I've got two speakers on. Are they showing up on your screen or?
Well, the motion's been.
I made the motion second, but
So I guess-
Renata and Tony were still in line, so we can have further discussion.
So we can keep going here. So we've got a motion. So let's continue discussion here with Commissioner Mengelberg, please.
I was just going to comment on apartment development. This would be an ideal site for apartment development. It's right near a freeway. It's kind of secluded. Generally, apartments are considered not as desirable. This has high amenities with the cove and the view of the river and the access to the shopping center, and so
Transit.
and transit. So, in terms of a apartment place in the city, it's not bad. And if there are amenities like the Esplanade and recreation opportunities, it can be a high-quality living environment. The other thing to think about is that to make affordable housing, the best way to do it is to increase supply. And we do have an affordable housing issue all over the region, including in Oregon City. So this may help mitigate that. So that's a voice in favor of some of it.
Mr. Kunkel?
Thank you. Just a little bit of background. So when this was, as Mr. Underwood stated, we were directed not to renegotiate the DDA. So some of this is being brought forward to you so that we can get direction, to continue to try to work. And it sounds like we would like to do that in preparation for a January work session to address some of these outstanding questions that are out there. I would also need to just point out, until I have a fuller understanding of both the changes proposed to the DDA that are necessary to implement whatever we come up with out of this, and as it relates to the recent ballot measure, and whether changing the DDA, the existing contract, how much can we change that, are all questions that are still outstanding. So I just want to point that out there. We're still trying to unwind exactly what that ballot measure means, and what we can and cannot do.
All right, and if I could too, how much urban renewal money are we putting towards this
So
section?
we had an agreement for $745,000 contribution, and $50,000 of those funds have been allocated toward the habitat restoration feasibility study.
Okay. Because normally when we put urban renewal money forward, that is hopefully creating jobs. And I remember, Ed, about we did lot one, I think, where the mitigation stuff was going to be. That was going to be an office building, and I remember we took that out to do the mitigation stuff. But I was trying to remember when we did lot 5 also. So I'm just a little underwhelmed that all the office stuff is gone now, and now we just have a couple restaurants, which is fine. But maybe, well, but so that's my only thing, is that when we do give out urban renewal funds, it's usually directed to create some jobs, and so
Like City Hall. Sorry.
anyway, so that's my only issue with this right now too. So anyway, we do have a motion and a second here, so you can pull the board, please.
Commissioner Holliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Ide,
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Van Haverbeek,
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Aye.
Vice Chair Shaw.
All right.
That's it.
All right.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Ed. Nice seeing you, John.
I don't even have an agenda for that. Just that? Okay.
Minutes.
Okay, I would look for a
Move to
motion.
approve the minutes of October 19th, 2016.
Second.
Sorry.
Moved and seconded. And pull the board, please.
Yeah. Commissioner Holliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Ide,
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Van Haverbeek,
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Aye.
Vice Chair Shaw.
All right. All right, future agenda items. Hearing none?
Nope,
None?
nope.
Okay.
Wait a second.
City manager.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes.
We have
Oh,
I would like to have a discussion and a better understanding of what the ballot measure means and does not mean for us.
okay.
Is that
Point taken.
Well, yeah, and there's something else I've been thinking about. I think I mentioned it to Eric. Let's assume that at the end of the day, it turns out that urban renewal is still intact. The lot across the street, kitty corner from the Midway, that has been, started construction, stopped construction, fenced, unfenced, done whatever with over the years, and now it's obviously nothing's happening again. It might be interesting to talk about whether urban renewal should buy that and build something there and either sell it or lease it, just because it is such an eyesore and it's a major intersection in the city. So,
Okay, point taken.
Not now.
Okay. Anything else, anybody? No speakers. All right, city manager's report.
I do not have anything else for the Urban Renewal Agency tonight.
Okay. Anything from the commissioners? Hearing none, we're adjourned.
we'll come back.